Hi, my name is Ruby. I'm 21 years old, and 3 years ago I married the love of my life. At that moment, it seemed that everything was going perfectly. My husband is Spanish, and although there were slight cultural differences between us, we did not face any serious problems, except perhaps one, the language barrier. I spoke English, and his native language was Spanish. From the very beginning of our journey together, I realized that this could be a test, but I did not attach importance to it, because when you love, everything else seems insignificant. Nevertheless, I decided that I wanted to show my love not only through actions, but also through efforts. I started learning Spanish in secret from everyone. No one, including Johnson, my husband, and his mother Sophie, knew about my lessons. I didn't do it for praise or recognition, but because I wanted to get closer to him and his family. I wanted every conversation with his mother not to turn into fleeting smiles and nods of the head, but to be filled with real mutual understanding. It was my personal promise to myself to learn to speak the language of my husband's love. To my surprise, the study was quite successful. I began to understand more than I expected, and over time, my confidence grew. However, I was still too shy to show off my new skills. It was a kind of paradox. I knew that I could cope if I ended up in Spain, but at the same time I was shackled by fear. The fear that my Spanish will not be good enough, that I will pronounce something wrong or look stupid in the eyes of the people I love so much. Especially in front of my mother-in-law, Sophie, whose stern but affectionate gaze has always remained a mystery to me. Many people would ask themselves, if I already know the language at a decent level, why not start using it in everyday life? The answer to this question is simple: I was too shy. It is always difficult to speak a new language, especially with close people from whom you expect approval and support. But I knew it was temporary. I decided that soon I need to stop hiding. I need to start communicating in Spanish with my husband and his family. However, fate decreed otherwise. One day, during an ordinary conversation, which I thought did not carry anything unusual, I learned something that turned everything upside down. It was at one of those Sunday dinners when the whole family gets together. Sophie greeted me warmly, as always, but her voice, her intonation suddenly seemed fake to me. Johnson was busy helping with the cooking, and I, already accustomed to the role of observer, as usual, sat modestly at the table, immersed in my thoughts. Sophie, smiling, brought croissants and bagels to the table. It was weird. I knew she didn't like American food, but I tried to be friendly. All this time we were talking in English, as if respecting my inability to understand Spanish. But then I heard her words spoken in Spanish, which came as a real shock to me. "Forgive me, my dear daughter," Sophie said in English with forced tenderness in her voice. "I just said that the food looks so good." I was surprised to find out that my son cooked it. "Oh, I wish you could cook it. I like the way you cook." I sat at the table, hiding my confusion, but a fire was burning inside me. How could she say such terrible things in Spanish and then look me in the eye and lie in English with a smile? Maybe I really misunderstood. I was trying to calm myself down. But something inside me told me that this was not a mistake. And although I wanted to run away from the table and hide from all these lies, I made a firm decision to find out the truth to the end. I came up with an idea. If my knowledge of Spanish does not fail, then I will be able to catch their conversation, but just in case, I decided to use the Google Translate app. The plan was simple: record the conversation and check if I understood everything correctly. Sophie continued to talk to Johnson in Spanish, thinking that, as usual, I did not understand anything. I pretended to dive into the phone, and they apparently decided that they could talk more openly. We all sat down at the table, as usual, decorously and organized, as if nothing strange had happened. However, this time something was clearly different. There seemed to be tension in the air, and the words that I heard through the translation of the application shocked me to the depths of my soul. "I want us to discuss our plan," Sophie said in Spanish, her voice becoming serious. The time is approaching. It's literally tomorrow. Johnson, you have to be serious, she continued. The app confirmed my worst fears. They were really up to something. Some kind of plan, but what was it? I heard snatches of phrases, but nothing formed a clear picture. Mom, not now, Johnson replied with a slight irritation in his voice, as if they had already discussed this more than once. I said I'd deal with it. What are you going to tell her? Sophie turned to him, nodding in my direction. I tensed, trying not to show that I could hear everything. Ruby, dear, pass me the sugar, please, Johnson said, giving me a fleeting smile. For a moment, their conversation drifted into familiar English, and returned to Spanish when I handed him the sugar bowl. She doesn't know anything about the plan, Sophie whispered. I was just going to tell her that I'd be out of town. I felt a chill run through my body. What's the plan? Why is he going to go out of town? Why? What's happening? Barely restraining myself from betraying my thoughts, I still continued to listen attentively to their conversation. The app translated every phrase, and I was constantly checking it to make sure I didn't miss anything important. They seemed to decide that I wasn't paying attention, and their words became more and more explicit. She's not too smart, look at her glued to the phone, Sophie hissed, her voice full of contempt. We can talk about it now. Okay, Mom, Johnson agreed. What do you want to discuss? The plane leaves at 1400 hours, Sophie said calmly. Are you sure you can escape from her? I felt my fists clench. At first I couldn't believe my ears, but the words continued to ring out, confirming my worst guess. Johnson is going to leave me. Everything I thought was real was an illusion. Yes, Mom, I know. I'll do what needs to be done, he replied, his voice low but determined. I know how important this is. If your great-uncle doesn't see us tomorrow, he'll give the house to someone else, Sophie continued. For example, your cousin or your aunt. We cannot allow this to happen. No one should know about this house. A house? Which house? What is it about? I tried to keep myself from immediately demanding an explanation. I had to stay calm, maintain the appearance of ignorance in order to understand what was going on. Oh, Mom, you're so funny, Johnson chuckled, switching to English, as if just for me. Don't worry, I just said it in English so she wouldn't know what we were talking about. Who, Ruby? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, my love, Johnson said, seemingly with an innocent smile. I just asked who made this delicious tea, it's great. Oh, that would be your talent, son. I'm afraid I'm not as good at these things as he is, Sophie added, trying to continue to mask the absurdity of her phrases. Oh, darling, your food is just amazing, she chuckled, adding with a subtle grin, stunningly terrible, Mom. Her words cut the air between us like blades, but I remained calm despite the stabs of pain. I could have lost control, but I knew it was important not to get emotional right now. Listening attentively to their conversations in Spanish and watching their faces, I learned more and more. At that moment, Johnson took a quick glance at his mother and muttered something that immediately caught my attention. She'll catch you, Mom. He won't, Sophie replied with indifference, as if it were a matter of course. She's too stupid to understand us. My heart stopped beating. I held on, trying not to show my excitement. I don't know, Mom, Johnson added after a short pause. She obviously understands something. I think we should check to see if she really knows Spanish. Sophie turned to me, her eyes frozen in a cold stare. Ruby, dear, how well do you know Spanish at this moment? I managed to stay calm despite the waves of shame and anger that were rolling over me. I smiled, pretending that the question didn't bother me. Oh, I'm still talking very badly, I said with deliberate modesty. I only know typical phrases like buen dia and como te llamas, but that's all. Oh, It's just useless, darling. You should learn some more Spanish, Sophie sneered mockingly. Yes, ma'am, I'll do it for Johnson and me, I replied, trying not to flinch. So we can gossip about you. Sophie grinned, casting a quick glance at her son. I'm joking, of course. I smiled as if nothing had happened, but inside I was trembling with anger. They kept laughing, thinking that I was really that stupid. Yes, it's funny, isn't it? We would never do that to you. Or, wait, are we doing this right now? Sophie and Johnson laughed, not noticing that their insults were deepening the gap between us. I continued to check the translation through the app and look for confirmation on the forums. Everything I found only reinforced my suspicions. They made fun of me, talked behind my back, thinking I was too naive to understand them. But now I knew the truth. Now I needed to gather as much information as possible to understand their true intentions. The next thing I heard made my heart beat faster. This house is extremely important, Sophie said, her voice becoming serious. No one should know about this house. We should be the only ones who know about him, because we can make a lot of money. Yes, Johnson said. We can't miss this opportunity. I'm so glad we're doing this. It's a good thing we didn't tell my wife. I don't want to share the spoils with her. The words cut like a dagger. Johnson, the one I loved, the one I trusted more than anything in the world, was discussing plans that I wasn't in. He didn't want to share with me what I realized was not just real estate, but part of a family conspiracy. Everything should go smoothly, he continued. Your great-uncle Michael said that whoever contacts him first on this matter will inherit the mansion. That's why we need to get there before anyone else. The mansion? What kind of mansion are we talking about? And then I'll start working on the renovation, Johnson added, almost proudly. I can't wait to have a house in New Hampshire. This will be my sanctuary. I'm going there to escape from my wife and my life here in Mississippi. Sometimes I just can't stand her. Every word was like a slap in the face. Did you want to escape from me? Living in a house I didn't know anything about. You're still too young to marry someone like her, Sophie continued. Come and live with me in New Hampshire. There you can enjoy life, youth, women, and booze. And then, when you're ready, you'll settle down. Honestly, Mom, Johnson replied, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I think you're right. I couldn't take it anymore. My heart was breaking into pieces, but I wasn't going to make a scene. Pulling myself together, I said, trying to keep calm. Excuse me, I need to get something from the kitchen. They barely noticed that I was gone. I was too upset to stay in their company. How could they talk about me as if I didn't exist? I went into the kitchen and started pacing back and forth, trying to come to my senses. But my thoughts wouldn't let me rest. I looked at the counter and saw Sophie's bag. The phone. An inner impulse guided me at that moment. I went to the bag, looked inside, and luckily her phone was unlocked. I quickly found WhatsApp and sent Uncle Michael's number to my phone. After that, I carefully deleted the message to make it look like nothing had happened. I acted instinctively, realizing that this was my only chance to find out the truth to the end. I didn't do it. I don't know why I did it, but I was glad, because now I had a plan for revenge. When I returned to the dining room, I noticed that the conversation was still going on. They discussed the same things, future plans, vacations, and the opportunities that open up to them. We're going on vacation tomorrow, Johnson said with a smug smile. I think we deserve this rest after all the hard work we've done. Yes, Sophie confirmed, narrowing her eyes slightly. Secondly, we deserve this break. I sat down at the table, feeling the tension between us becoming palpable, and decided to intervene. Is everything all right? I asked casually, trying to look nonchalant. Yes, dear, Johnson replied, pretending that nothing was happening. We were just talking about the weather and how this is the perfect day to go somewhere to relax. Would you like to come with us? I chuckled inwardly. This scene, this feigned interest in my desires, looked so fake. Maybe not today, I said thoughtfully, studying their reactions. But maybe tomorrow? And at that moment, both Sophie and Johnson stiffened slightly. I noticed this subtle gesture, which did not escape my attention. I don't think it will be possible tomorrow, Johnson tried to hide his concern. Mom asked me to help with some chores around the house. Oh, what's the deal? I asked, feigning genuine interest. Maybe I can help too. Sophie gave me an annoyed look. No need, Johnson replied quickly, trying not to let the conversation go too far. Just move things. It won't take long. Really? I continued to insist. I could help if you need me. Sophie could barely contain her displeasure, and there was a note of irritation in her voice. Look how curious she is, she whispered to Johnson in Spanish, thinking I wouldn't understand. I don't like it a bit. Do you understand why you need to leave her? Johnson nodded, but did not answer. I kept smiling, as if I didn't understand a word, but I was seething with indignation. I knew they were hiding something important. Their neglect only fueled my resolve. Revenge is near, I thought. I will wait, collect all the necessary evidence and take revenge. I continued to record their conversations until the very end, checking every word through Google Translate. Even though my Spanish was already pretty good, I still didn't want to rely on my knowledge alone. It was necessary to make sure that every detail was correct. That evening, when I went to the bedroom, I quietly went to the office to conduct additional investigation. I turned on the recordings and played them back, checking every last phrase. My doubts were dispelled. The plan was obvious. They were going to leave tomorrow to be the first to get the right to Uncle Michael's house. This house was their main target. And there was no way they were going to share it with me. Everything became crystal clear. I needed to act immediately. I left my phone in the room where Johnson and Sophie were to record further conversation. While I was in the kitchen, my plan was overgrown with new details. Sophie asked Johnson questions about his computer password. I want to change some details of our flight, she said, thinking about something. I managed to remember the password, and as soon as I had the opportunity, I logged into his computer. I found full flight information on the website where the tickets were booked. Here it is. That was the moment when I felt like I was in control of the situation. I was thinking about rescheduling their flight to another day. Their plans were about to be foiled, and this was just the first stage of my revenge. With each step, I understood more deeply how exactly I could destroy their plans. When I sent Uncle Michael's number to myself, I had even more confidence. I was ready to do what was needed. I called Uncle Michael. Hi, Uncle Michael, this is Ruby. Oh, hi, honey, how are you? It's okay, well, not really, I began. My words sounded resolute, but there was tension in my voice. I told him in detail what had happened during the day, described every unpleasant moment, every lie and falsehood that I had heard. As proof, I sent him an audio recording. Without her, he would hardly have believed me. We briefly interrupted the conversation so that Uncle Michael could listen to the recording. I waited for his answer, feeling the tension fill me from head to toe. When he called back, his voice was full of confusion. Wow. I don't even know what to say. How could Sophie and Johnson do this? They were such sweet and innocent people when they were younger. How could they do this to you, and me? Uncle Michael's words filled me with both bitterness and satisfaction. Everything was in my hands now. I know it's worth a lot, Uncle Michael said, sighing heavily into the phone, as if everything he'd heard today had shaken him to the core. It shocked me too. You've really improved your Spanish, well done. Thank you, Michael, I replied with a slight smile, feeling proud that my efforts had been recognized. But now that all this has become known, one thing is clear: they will not get this house. This is a fact. Yes, after all that, he agreed. I would never give such a valuable and honorable gift to people who plan to destroy it with their malice and stupidity. Okay, I said slowly, feeling relieved that Uncle Michael wasn't going to make concessions. This is your home, and you have every right to do whatever you want with it. That's right, his voice became firm again. From now on, I will ignore their calls. Let's see what they think about it. Thanks again for bringing this to my attention. You're a good and kind-hearted person, Ruby. Please don't let the ugliness of this world change you. Thank you, Uncle Michael. My words sounded sincere, but inside I knew that I had already changed. And thank you for your time and willingness to listen. What you heard today couldn't have been easy. I applaud you for your strength. Take care of yourself, Ruby, he replied, his voice filled with care and warmth. Good night. You too, Uncle Michael. Good night. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a few moments, digesting everything that had happened. I have achieved what I wanted. Sophie and Johnson, those two people I once trusted, have now been defeated. Now that everything was settled, I could only wait for the right moment to strike the final blow. When I returned to the bedroom, I was surprised to see that Johnson was still sound asleep. His face was calm, there was no anxiety or worry reflected on it, as if nothing in his life had changed. But I knew the truth. This man, my husband, with whom I once shared every moment of my life, betrayed me in the most insidious way. The pain pierced me like a sharp dagger. How could the man I loved with all my heart do this to me? Would we have had any chance of reconciliation if we had talked? Maybe we lost each other somewhere along the way, and if we had taken the time to talk, we could have saved our marriage. But instead, he chose deception. With a heavy heart, I took his phone, turned off the alarm and quietly left the bedroom. He would probably oversleep without an alarm clock, and that was exactly what I needed. I packed my things and headed to the hotel. I couldn't stay under the same roof with this man anymore. The next morning, the real chaos began. As I expected, Johnson woke up to hundreds of missed calls from his mother. I could almost see him rushing around the house, gathering things in a panic, because, of course, he hadn't bothered to do it the day before. At 1300 hours, he called me. His voice was full of rage and panic. Where the hell are you? Why didn't my alarm go off? And why aren't you here? I sighed calmly and replied with restraint. Oh, I decided to take a little vacation for myself. Vacation? He sounded puzzled. That's great, but a little attention from you would be appreciated. Yes, maybe. I purposely kept my answers short and cryptic, watching his irritation grow. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm late for a plane, that is, to meet my mom. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm sure she won't mind if you're a little late. You don't understand anything. He exploded, but quickly restrained himself. Okay, I won't be home tonight, and I won't be home tomorrow night either. I have a lot to do. See you later. He quickly hung up the phone without even giving me a chance to answer. I chuckled. He was so engrossed in his haste that he didn't even check his tickets. But I knew he was trapped. I had changed his flight through the website in advance, and now his plans were falling apart right before my eyes. Using the Find My iPhone app, I watched him drive to the airport. I could almost see him racing at full speed, hoping to catch a flight in the last few minutes. But when he arrives, an unpleasant surprise awaits him. His flight was rescheduled. He only finds out about it at the airport. My phone rang. It was Sophie. What did you do? She screamed, barely able to contain her anger. What are you doing, Ruby? Sophie, let's not make any plays. I replied calmly. I know you're interfering with our flight. If by intervention you mean changing the date, then yes, that's exactly what I did. Why would you do that? Her voice was shaking with anger. We were trying to help you and Johnson. Really? I chuckled. You were trying to help yourself, not us. While moving some things, I began, feeling the tension building in Johnson's voice. I noticed that you and Sophie have a flight booked for today, the same day you were supposed to help me. That's why I decided to adjust your plans a little. Please, Johnson, be kind enough to come to your wife and talk to me before I finally strangle you through this phone. Johnson was silent for a few seconds, but I imagined him clutching the phone convulsively in his hand. Then he exhaled sharply and wheezed. Look, Ruby, I don't know what you've done, but whatever it is, stop it right now. His voice sounded muffled, as if he was trying to suppress panic. Uncle Michael is still not answering. He turned to Sophie. Try again, Sophie. I heard her excited voice in the background. I've already tried it several times. He's not answering his phone. Because he doesn't want to talk to you either, I replied calmly. Can you understand us, Johnson? His face had undoubtedly turned pale. Only his heavy breathing could be heard on the phone. I continued, enjoying the strange combination of satisfaction and sadness that enveloped me. I learned Spanish to communicate better with you and your mom. But as it turned out, it also helped me uncover your plans. The silence dragged on. Finally, Johnson managed to say, Did you know all this time? Yes, I said coldly. I heard everything. All you planned to do was leave me to claim the house without my knowledge. I've heard all your conversations. Johnson and Sophie were silent, their breathing on the phone became even more ragged. I could feel the shock and fear holding them down. And now what? Johnson finally exhaled, clearly realizing that his plans were falling apart. Now you're dealing with the consequences of your actions, I snapped. I've already talked to Uncle Michael. He knows everything. You won't get this house. But, Ruby, you don't understand. Johnson seemed depressed and desperate. We had no choice. We need this house. I narrowed my eyes, and there was icy confidence in my voice. You had a choice, Johnson. You could be honest with me. But you decided to deceive me. And now you have to live with the consequences. There was a long silence on the phone before Sophie decided to speak. Her voice trembled with tension and regret. Ruby, we're sorry. We didn't want it to go that far. It's too late to apologize. My voice sounded firm and dispassionate. You made your bed. Now I have to lie in it. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Everything was ready. Their plans fell through, and I guaranteed they wouldn't get the house. However, instead of joy, I felt a lingering sense of sadness. The people I once loved betrayed me in the basest way. The family I thought I was a part of turned out to be fake. But I knew that now I had to move on. I packed my things and checked out of the hotel, deciding to stay with a friend for a while until I decide what to do next. After leaving the hotel, I stopped for a moment, allowing myself to realize the full range of feelings that were boiling in me: anger, relief, sadness, but above all, a sense of power. I stood up for myself and took control of the situation. Later that day, when I thought this nonsense was finally over, Uncle Michael called me. Hi, honey. How are you? There was warmth in his voice, but I could sense that he was worried. I'm a little upset, I admitted. I just had a terrible fight with Johnson and Sophie, and now I'm filing for divorce. I'm really sorry that things turned out this way, Ruby. His voice sounded sincere. It's a part of life. Sometimes those closest to us betray us. Yes, I think you're right, I sighed. And how are you doing with them? Well, I finally talked to them and told them everything I think, Uncle Michael replied with a heavy sigh. As you expected, they are unhappy. I told John that he was an idiot if he did this to you. Uncle Michael's voice sounded resolute and cold. And Sophie said that she was angry for dragging her son into her disgusting plans. And yes, dear, I also told them that the house is yours now. The mansion belongs to you. Even if you divorce John, he will remain yours, and you can do whatever you want with him. To share it with anyone you wish or keep it for yourself, the choice is yours. I froze in place when I heard these words, feeling like the world around me suddenly lost its shape. It's like everything that's happening is some kind of dream that I'm about to wake up from. A mansion worth several $1,000,000. To me, it didn't make sense. I don't know what to say, Michael. It's too much. My voice was shaking with overwhelming emotion. I wanted this house to go to a kind and compassionate person, but at the same time strong when needed. And that's exactly what you are, Ruby. Uncle's voice was warm, filled with pride. Home is the least I can do after all you've been through because of those two. I was silent, not knowing what to say. The idea that all this was really happening, that the house they were so eager to get now belonged to me, was both real and incredible. The house is yours, dear. Take it after this call, Uncle Michael concluded. After his words, I experienced an incredible mix of emotions. On the one hand, I am relieved that I have finally got rid of the toxic people in my life. On the other hand, the unreality of what is happening. I was given a mansion that I would never have dreamed of. It was like the plot of some movie, but it was my reality, and it was unfolding here and now. The next few days were a whirlwind of events. I moved my things into the mansion, arranging it to my liking, as if every detail reflected my newfound freedom and strength. Every room became a reminder that I had been through deception and betrayal, but I came out of it stronger. Sophie and Johnson were furious. They didn't stop sending threats, trying to intimidate me into giving up the house. But I stood firm, not succumbing to their manipulations. Every time they sent me another threat, I responded by sending them a photo of one of the rooms of the house, showing them that it was now my possession. I wanted them to feel the pain of what they had lost, to realize the consequences of their betrayal. Revenge has never been so sweet. One evening, sitting in the spacious living room of the mansion, I reflected on everything that had happened in recent weeks. The memories of how much I once loved Johnson hit me like a wave. I studied Spanish to better understand his family, trying to become a part of it. And all the while they were making plans to get rid of me. These memories were painful, but I realized that I had gone through this ordeal, had become stronger and freer. Uncle Michael's call snapped me out of my thoughts. Ruby, I just wanted to check on you. His voice was soft and caring. It's okay, Michael, I smiled, feeling grateful for his support. Thank you for everything. The house is just wonderful. I'm glad you like him, darling, he replied with a note of joy in his voice. You deserve it, after all you've been through. It really means a lot to me, Michael. I couldn't put all my emotions into words. I was thinking maybe you should move to Spain for a while. He suggested. A change of scenery might be good for you. It would help you recover from all this. I thought about his words. This seemed like a reasonable suggestion. A new country, a new culture, all this could help me finally leave the past behind and start a new chapter in my life. That's a good idea, Michael, I replied. I think I'll think about it seriously. After I hung up the phone, a feeling of peace settled in my soul. My future was uncertain, but I knew that I had the strength to withstand any difficulties that came my way. I overcame betrayal and pain and came out of it victorious. The mansion that became my new home was not just a building. He was a symbol of my resilience, strength, and ability to cope with any challenges. And I realized one important truth: the best revenge in this life is to live well. Now I had a beautiful home, a supportive family in the person of Uncle Michael, and a bright future ahead. Let Sophie and Johnson stew in their bitterness and regret. I was moving forward to a better life.